r/AskWomen. Transgenic Mouse says, what forced you leave a partner that you loved deeply? OK Interview 4162 says, emotional neglect. As much as I loved them, I realized that love alone wasn't enough to sustain a healthy relationship. Zobiblob says, could you be specific? Was the neglect on purpose, or did they not return the love back? Did either of you try to work on it? Yowlika Cakes says, not op, but I also experienced this. The way I explained it to him when I ended our marriage was it was like he hit a pause button on everything in life except work and expected everything to pause. But that's not how life works. Things keep moving outside of you, and people still have needs. I knew he loved me, but 18 months of being priority number 2 or 3 or 4 to work, his family, or his own needs took a toll. It put me on a path to resentment, which became impossible to come back from. He thought I'd be there forever, but you can't put in minimal effort and expect it to not affect someone. And it affected me in all aspects. My self-esteem dropped, I became less social, I became a bad partner. In my experience it wasn't deliberate, but it was an unexpected side effect from a series of choices he made. Midnight Fire Huntress says, warning, gross story. So basically we met through a friend during college and we instantly liked each other. We both loved video games and anime and everything nerdy. We played WoW together and a bunch of other games and were constantly spending time together both online and in person. Eventually he started really focusing on a game called League of Legends, like super focused. He would play for 15 to 20 hours a day and barely sleep or eat. I had a spare key to his apartment and would come over every day after my classes or my work shift. I went over one day and there were just bottles of pee everywhere. He told me he was in a long match and couldn't use the bathroom. The smell was overwhelming for sure, but it didn't stop there. Turns out he was holding in poop for literally hours and it eventually started seeping out. He was literally slowly shitting his pants and he refused to move. I would spend some time cleaning up his apartment and making food and begging him to please shower, and eventually he did. When he gave me dirty clothes to wash, there were skid marks all in his underwear, like he had shit himself and just didn't move for hours. I almost puked washing his clothes. So I sat him down one day and begged him to take a break from the game and stop acting like this. I told him I was lonely and wanted to go out with him and do things, and that he was being insanely unhealthy and really, I'm gross. He agreed to stop playing the game for about 2 days. During our anniversary date he said, actually I need to go home. I promised my League friends I'd be online at this time and he left. I broke up with him less than 24 hours later. He begged and cried and literally screeched like an animal when I told him I was leaving him. He kept saying he loved me and that he can't help but play the game and blah blah blah. Broke up with him and didn't look back. Looked him up on Facebook years later and he's done absolutely nothing with his life. He quit his job and dropped out of college and is now living with his parents and somehow lost all his hair and gained massive amounts of weight. I guess I dodged a bullet. I love video games as much as the next person, but I've never become gross over them. Hoarding Hatash says, my now ex-husband wasn't quite to this point, but his addiction to playing games, including League, is largely why we are no longer together. He was on disability, but was very capable of working. His kids who lived with us full-time were in school 7 hours a day, and I worked full-time. I was also in college full-time. He would sleep all day while everyone else was out of the house, pick the kids up from school a block from where we lived, and then start playing games. The second I walked in the door after work he would shut the door to his game room and we wouldn't see him until he came out to get food or go to the bathroom. Then he would go right. r/AskWomen. Capricin Light says, who do you consider some of the most inspiring and influential women of the 20th and 21st century? SP1D3RB0T says, I'm not sure about influential, but there are so many women who have inspired me, and I'm sure countless others. Mary Oliver, Frida Kahlo, Dorothea Lange, Marie Curie, Ursula K. Le Guin, Bell Hooks, shit. Dolly Frick, Ayn Parton. I would say she is influential as well as inspiring. Ditto Mary Tyler Moore, Shirley Temple Black Rosalind Carter. Also, a dude posted on Reddit, old school cool, I think, about his late wife, who was the first female lineman for their state's electric company in like the 70s? Maybe 80s. He posted a picture of her up on the line and told a little bit about her story. I think of her a lot. What she must have dealt with, and what an absolute badass she must have been. Had to put it in Redditism, I also choose that guy's wife. Ragnar Shara says, I've always been inspired by Jane Goodall. Law and Disorder says, Maggie Molly Brown from the Titanic. Essentially she was very poor, met JJ Brown, and he was also poor. Maggie was looking for a husband who could help care for her elderly father, but married JJ even though he was poor. BC she chose love over money. They had kids. JJ worked in the mines, and she worked at a soup kitchen to feed the mining families. Then JJ struck gold, and they became super wealthy. Maggie became a philanthropist and stark advocate of women's suffrage rights. She organized the International Women's Rights Conference and fought for women to be able to vote decades before it was legal. She also worked with Judge Ben Lindsay to develop one of the first juvenile courts in the US. Prior to that, there was just one court for adults and children. She became famous after the Titanic and known as the unsinkable Molly Brown. BC she urged the lifeboats to return to the shipwreck to look for any survivors. After getting back to the US, she created a foundation to fund replacement of belongings for the lower class citizens on the boat, and also to fund mental health services for survivors of the Titanic. She truly prioritized people over profit, and did all she could to help those with less than her. Certainly an inspiration. Villager Cynic says, a bit of a dark one, but GL Pellicott came to mind. It's a shame what happened to her, but her bravery has been outstanding. She's a badass. The story of Nirja Bannard should also be better known. Maybe not influential, but inspiring. Edit, I forgot Tove Jansson. She was a prolific illustrator, painter, graphic designer, comic book artist, set designer, costume designer, scriptwriter, author and more. Redhead 122,024 says, Emmeline Pankhurst for her role in the suffragette movement. Orftem says, Lisa HSU. Seer of Chipmaker AMD. She's the real deal. Abranerney says, Hedy Lamarr, I couldn't be posting this from my phone without her. She was a goddess, clever, brave, and beautiful. Dogma 814 says, Hillary Clinton, Michelle Obama, Gloria Steinem, Simone Biles, Eleanor Roosevelt, Malala Yousafzai, Rosa Parks, Ada Lovelace, Marie Curie. Difficult Lobster 608 says, my mom. Agreeable Trash 5165 says, Elizabeth Warren. Absolutely fearless. Mama 2 Beb says, Maya Mottolai Francesca Albanese Michelle Obama. Penguin South says, Lynn Hill, one of the leading rock climbers in all disciplines in the world during the late 1980s and early 1990s, leading, not just leading women. She's famous for making the first free ascent of the difficult sheer rock face of the nose on El Capitan in Yosemite Valley. She beat the guys to it. Such a hero, and probably not well known outside climbing circles, a god to all climbers. Nick Blankritis says, Susan Sontag. She wrote extensively about literature, photography, and media, culture, AIDS, and illness, war, human rights, and left-wing politics. Her essays and speeches drew backlash and controversy, and she has been called one of the most influential critics of her generation. Princess Joy Hope says, for me it's mainly women in fields that I've been in, like military, for instance. Mary Edwards Walker, the only woman to ever earn the Medal of Honor, Science, E.G. Ada Lovelace, Mary Curie, Vera Rubin. Also, women in the military and scientific fields still have it really rough. I can't imagine what it was like 100 years ago or more. Also, as a chess lover, women in chess have greatly inspired me and continue to this day. The chess world is chock full of arrogant and misogynistic men, and professional women players are like superheroes to me. Torchbearers like Nona G and Pia Cramping, Judith and Susan Polgar, and the newer generation doing such a fantastic job popularizing the sport with their classy and warm commentating. Jennifer Shahade, Tanaya Sachdev, Naz Paykids. Jen Shahade, specifically, is such a role model for me. She is just so courageous. She goes and puts sexual assault problems in the chess world on blast over Twitter, naming the offender and everything. She had to do this because no one she reported to had done anything about it, and many women had already forwarded in private. She is the reason that specific man is no longer in the chess world, is under criminal investigation, etc. That's all for this video. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe